Thank you and welcome to the Zoom webinar that has been called by the Wisdom Foundation. Welcome to the Zoom webinar which has been called by the Wisdom Foundations. So salam, namaskar, good evening, sat sri akal, shalom, and greetings to all for the Human Rights Day, which is today. There is just one bit of sad news. One of our panelists and my very distinguished advisory board member, Admiral Ramdas Sahab, has not been able to come. And we have to thank Shri Sanjay Jha, who is also a very dear friend of mine, to have agreed to talk to us on the same subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Distinguished panelists, the Wisdom Foundation, dignitaries, academia, people of India, members of the press, welcome to the Zoom webinar organized by the Wisdom Foundation entitled A Conversation Among the People of India, Democracy, Constitutionalism, and a Composite Culture. The Wisdom Foundation is a secular, democratic, Indian global initiative enshrining the principles of nonviolence, peace building, communal harmony, conflict transformation, and humanitarian service. It is based on Gandhian values. As the father of the nation has said, a small body of determined spirits fired by an unquenchable thirst in their mission can alter the course of history. It assists and collaborates with like-minded organizations in areas of national and international interest. Today, terrorism has become a part of modern life and a scourge of terrorism needs to be addressed. Hijackings, bombings, and assassinations on different continents of the world may seem like isolated attacks, but they reflect an easy reliance on violence. International terrorism has become a scourge of all democratic governments. No religion preaches violence as a panacea for all ills afflicting society. India and the world are afflicted by it. We need to rid ourselves of the scourge as quickly as we can. We at the Wisdom Foundation are trying to reclaim the idea of India. For this purpose, we have organized this Zoom webinar where eminent speakers are, who was supposed to speak, former Admiral Ramdas, the Distinguished Chief of Naval Staff, 1990 to 1993, leading peace. He was a leading peace. He is a leading peace activist, but unable to attend our webinar for health reasons. We have Shri Sanjay Jha, who is the national spokesperson for the Congress Party and a very dear friend of ours. And we have with us a very distinguished senior columnist and a media person and Rajya Sabha member, Shri Kumar Ketkar. Thank you, Kumarji, for being with us. Ex-IPS Super Cop, Shri Julio Ribeiro. Thank you, Julio, for being with us. Historian and activist, Professor Puniyani, who is very well known, and thank you for being with us, Professor, and the great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, who is the president of the Lok Seva Trust, a goodwill ambassador, and a very respected citizen. A question and answer session will follow the discussion. We believe that India has been a well-being state, diversely unified, yet not uniform, a model of social constitutionalism, yet presently there is a red line between pluralism and democracy on the one hand, and exclusivism and populism on the other. Societal conflicts abound. Multiculturalism is on a downslide while marginalization is dampening and limiting advancement. Whereas managing complex problems, halting deepening vigilance is an urgency, the carving of an effective path for synchronization and progress is a necessary component. The coronavirus has exposed our frailty. We have, far from being the great leveler, it has exposed and increased inequalities. In the present milieu, in the struggle to gain its rightful place for the relevance and restoration of the idea of India, fresh mechanisms are a prerequisite for transformation. Complexities of globalizations once sold as offering promising service to economies and world citizens has been stalled in lieu of hollowed out hollowed out economies. Transatlantic multilateral institutions have failed to manage global challenges such as global warming, such as global warming, sorry, and financial instability. Even worldwide powers can no longer be defined as a cozy club. In India, energy is sapped by demonetization and a quagmire of domestic political economic congestion. There is a global disorder that needs correction. A leading intellectual from India, Bhanu Pratap, has observed that it is also part of a global trend that in some parts of the world, where there is a kind of democratic barbarism, democracy, constitutionalism, a composite culture, the basic underpinnings seem to be a casualty today. The challenges are surfeit, indifference, ethical negligence, cultural barriers, disdain from civil liberties, media irresponsibilities, amputation of deep institutional roots, symptomatically are harbingers of ushering in perilous times. Terms of managing the complex glitches have no easy reposits unless the flame of the collective conscience in India comes alive. Transcending such syndromes require pragmatism and a shift of strategy. Moving towards transition through peace mechanisms of trust building, open minded conversations, overcoming confrontational forces are driving points. For the refurbishment of the receding idea of India, a possibility would be blunting identity politics and reviving the structural order. In conclusion, I would like to say that a revival of the embodiment of the wisdom of the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, needs manifestation. The legacy of constitutional and institutional response is revitalizing. The liberal order that is seemingly in the process of being shrugged off, stemming social conflicts, and empowered civil society, the rule of law, a responsible media, refreshing multiculturalism with new players with required structural changes in the world order solicit discussions. The inspiring insights of Mahatma Gandhi needs renewal. The path of Satyagraha, which literally means insistence on truth coupled with ahimsa, shown by him, led not only to the Indian independence but also to similar non-violent successful movements in many parts of the world. Better known among them are Martin Luther King's emancipation of blacks from racial discrimination by whites in the USA, Nelson Mandela's abolition of apartheid in South Africa. It's all in our conversations on the idea of India. The India of our dreams on the social front will perhaps, as Bapu imagined it, is सपनों के ऐसे जहां में जहां प्यार ही प्यार खिला हो हम जाके वहां खो जाए शिकवा न कोई गिला हो जहां बैर न हो कोई गैर न हो सब मिलके यूं ही चले जहां गम भी न हो आंसू भी न हो बस प्यार ही प्यार पले एक ऐसे गगन के तले. This is where we want to take India. This is what we believe is the idea of India. This is the idea of India that was Mahatma Gandhi's, our Bapuji's. Thank you very much. Now I invite Shri Sanjay Jha, Congress Party former spokesman of the Congress Party, to give us his perspectives. He is the executive director of Dale Carnegie, former banker and MBA, PhD in economics. His recent book, The Great Unraveling of India after 2014, launches on the 21st of December 2020. We request him to address us on restoring the idea of India. And before that, I would just like to read a message that has been sent to us by our Admiral Ramdas, which I would like to read to you. My sincerest apologies for not being here in person, but a medical emergency had made it impossible. On the occasion of Human Rights Day today, I wish to remind all of us that our constitution is under threat as never before, and we need to come together to save this wonderful document. We are seeing what is happening to the farmers, to the academics and intellectuals, in short, to all those who dissent. All we can do is work together and join hands together with the wise people of our country who will eventually be the ones to save our constitution and restore our republic to its fullest glory. Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Hind, Jai Jagat, Admiral Ramdas. Thank you, Admiral Ramdas. We miss you very, very much. And you are always in our thoughts. May I now request Shri Sanjay Jha to address us, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zenat. I hope everybody can hear me loud and clear. If you can, just give me a thumbs up. Great. I just got a call from Zenat about an hour ago, and I have always believed that to just kind of be there when such crazy situations happen. It happens all the time. One must arise for a friend, and when I see this wonderful panel, and I happen to know, I have met. Mr. Ribeiro on a couple of occasions. What a distinguished personality he is does not have to be, in fact, mentioned at all. Kumar happens to be somebody whom I have known very well for a long time. Thankfully, he is not yet suspended by the Congress. Tushar, a legend. I love the way he has the spunk to fight it out day in and night out. And Mr. Puniyani is somebody whom I know personally and have the highest regard for. I have not met some of the others on the show, but it's my great privilege and honor to take the next 10 minutes to tell you what I feel about this subject. In my opinion, and I'll be very blunt and forthright, the time for pussyfooting around and making politically correct statements is long over. Is India a democracy? Is itself a question that we need to ask ourselves. Are we living in a delusional universe if we begin to tell ourselves that we are still a thriving third world country and that it is not a tin pot dictatorship simply because we have elections? I think if there was one message that came through loud and clear to me in 2020, it was when in the middle of the worst human tragedy the world has ever experienced, the coronavirus pandemic that frankly speaking has ravaged the world, from a Boris Johnson to a Donald Trump to a Bolsonaro to heads of state, the biggest personalities in the world have been affected by it. In the middle of all that, we in India had this remarkable distinction of actually playing communal politics. I don't know how many of you are aware of what happened with the Tablighi Jamaat, but at a time when humanity was so susceptible that anybody could be affected by the virus, could die. And the government had the responsibility of stopping the spread of that deadly pathogen. We in India were in this extraordinary circumstance where we were actually still indulging in sectarian politics. To my mind, that to me was a great shame for a country that, as we all probably on this panel believe, is the dream of Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Nehru. Let's move forward a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, you might have read about the fact that there was a TV commercial put out by the Tata Group's company Titan that talked about fraternity, brotherhood, well, to use the more popular term, communal harmony. The Muslims are still seen in a large part of our country as being very conservative, almost regressive in their social customs. But here you had an advertisement that showed a Hindu bride being welcomed by a Muslim mother-in-law who tries to make her feel at home. I don't think there could have been anything more symbolic of India's syncretic culture than that ad. And it came as a precursor to Diwali, which we all celebrate as our New Year's Day. I was astonished. I don't know whether you were. I was stunned into disbelief that that advertisement saw a backlash of the most toxic, uh, shall we say, hate that I had seen in a long time. And, societies always remain vulnerable. Please remember that, to this kind of virulent vehemence, the anger, the hate, the repressed feeling that, I need to catch up and I need to fix somebody. That my life is not great just because I have a house and a car, or because I get an income and I can have an EMI that I can pay. But my life is better. We can fix somebody else who's a supposed Frankenstein's monster or a threat. And whenever we are looking at our society where we look at somebody else that we need to blame for our problems, we use a historical grievance in the case of the Muslims in India. But I think the way over the last 5-6 years, we are seeing the gradual normalization of hate, the mainstreaming of animosity, the acceptance of the othering project. I think these are symptomatic of a larger society facing fissures and fissiparous tendencies that may be hard to fill in one election cycle. I worry. I worry because I have a selfish interest to see India do well. One of my daughters is abroad, the other one is leaving soon. And I don't want them to come and tell me, which they have begun to tell me, is, Dad, what do we want to come back to? To a country that has become so intolerant that even having a conversation or a discussion can lead to an FIR or to a defamation suit. We have seen what is going on in this country. There are far too many examples to talk of. There is an 83-year-old man who has to struggle to get a straw to have a drink in a jail. I mean, these are larger manifestations of a moral crisis that India faces today. Why are we surprised that, the farmers who are protesting are called Khalistanis or terrorists or Pakistani or Chinese agents? If you question the government, you do become a traitor. But what astonishes me is the fact that, we meet like this, we talk, and everyone on this panel is a very well-meaning individual, intellectually gifted, possessing the prowess to make a difference to society. But the fact is that, we talk to each other, we remain in an echo chamber. And until we reach out and begin to talk to those who have become so susceptible to propaganda, to a planned attempt to brainwash people, Indian society is not really going to see any extraordinary change. Today, we face, and this is a hard fact of life, that we all somewhere down the line expect somebody else to fight for us. So I will say Kumar Ketkar will fight it out. Kumar Ketkar says Tushar Gandhi will fight it out. And somebody else will say, I'll wait for Mr. Ribeiro's column to come in the Indian Express. Or Mr. Puniyani to write another book and put it out in the public domain. The fact is, democracy needs society to stand up collectively to fight for it. And I need to bite the bullet here. We can keep talking about this till the cows come home, Zeenat. But if the idea of India that you talked about is going to be saved, then you need a political party to save it for India. Like it or not, civil society needs a political character in parliament to save it. Because the truth is, the idea of India that we talk about is our idea of India, an inclusive, secular, liberal, democratic culture of the Gandhi-Nehru era, for a long time practiced by the party from which I stand suspended. But I want to tell you that there is an idea of India that is now called the new idea of India, that now looks within, that wants to take India back to the ancient ages, that doesn't believe in scientific temperament, that disrespects India's constitution, that is contemptuous of Indian democracy, that treats liberals like Naxals, urban Naxals, or whatever they call them, that believes that anyone who protests is a cross-border infiltrator, and which at the end of the day is callous enough to completely destroy everything that we have fought for over the last 73 years. So like it or not, this is the truth, that if India has ever been vulnerable, it's now. But these warning signs have come for a while. And since I promised Zeenat that I won't take too long, because I have a commitment to go to, and one gets very passionate when one begins to talk about it. I do believe that we need political parties in India and leadership to be demonstrated who are willing to take the bull by the horns. And I want to leave this for Kumar to answer after I leave, because the Congress party has the onus to defend this. And not just to defend it, to win this battle for India. We are living in too many binaries, the Hindu versus Muslim, the left versus right, the rich versus the poor. This will continue. I mean, we are far too fractured a society for too long. Can't blame everything on the BJP. They can always say that the Congress has an equally patchy and an embarrassing track record in terms of secularism. They say, who the hell are you to give a certificate for secularism? Just as we tell them, who the hell are you to tell me whether I'm a patriot or a nationalist? We all have checkered track records, but I think it's time to bite the bullet and say, okay, we made mistakes, but now we wish to fight for it. Kumar, I do hope when the farmer protests are over, they will be at some point. I do hope the Congress party, to which I still proudly belong, they can sack me and suspend me, but they can't take away my ideology from me. I do hope the Congress party will actually take to mass protests against the anti-love jihad laws. We've got to walk the talk. There are people in our party, in the great Congress party of the Gandhi and Nehru, who will soft pedal the issue because they're very worried about the larger Hindu vote. But I would like the Congress party to go out there and say, this is communal politics, this is polarization politics, this is not good for society. And an individual freedom to love and to marry must be respected. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to wrap up by just saying one thing. In a society where a Tanishq ad led to anger, an ad that talked about love, in a society where if a Muslim boy were to marry a Hindu girl, India's most popular actor, by the way, Shah Rukh Khan, is in such a marriage. But if marriage and love and relationships can be subjected to state laws, if you and I are told who to love and who to listen to and who to kind of have a meal with, who to marry, then let's accept it that India is not at the crossroads of a very serious moral crisis. India is on the precipice of a monumental collapse. And I believe this distinguished panel, friends like Tushar and Ram and Kumar and Mr. Ribeiro, Zeenat, all of you, and people whom I don't know, you're far too, shall we say, gifted, strong, articulate, outstanding in your resilience to let that happen. So let's fight it. And I promise you that I'm there with you. Because to save India, to fight for this great country is an honor. And my book, which I have written, which comes out, very strangely enough, addresses the same problem. It's called The Great Unraveling, India After 2014. It is not a book which basically minces words. I have gone ahead and called a spade a spade. I have talked about the dangers of the RSS, the Hindutva, the BJP, Mr. Modi. But I've also said that India's liberals, India's civil society, and India's grand old party, the Congress party, will have to stand up and fight. And we all have a big contribution to India's future. Good luck. And I'm very confident that if we pull in together, we can save this phenomenal country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, for that very articulate talk. And thank you so much for being with us. I really
My pleasure.
appreciate last minute. And I know you're my dear friend, and I'm very grateful
Thank
to you. Thank you so much. May I now request Kumar Ketkar Sahab to, a member of the Rajya Sabha, a distinguished journalist, media person, renowned all over the world, a person who is very articulate and who is a distinguished member of my wisdom on the advisory board of the Wisdom Foundation. I give to you Shri Kumar Ketkar ji. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. You unmute him. Unmute him.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, now you're audible. Thank you.
Thank you, Zinat, and thank you, Sanjay, for proceeding with absolutely eloquent statement on the idea of India. Most of it I totally share. And I said most of it because he referred to Congress party and to which he belongs ideologically. And I know that he belongs ideologically to it. So except for that administrative angle of his suspension, I think I totally agree with him. The point that you have asked me to address is on the media. Actually, the term media is extremely misleading and a misnomer because let us say in 1960s or 1970s, in 1970s I joined the media. It was not known as media, it was only press, and freedom of the press was a question. Nobody had any television sets at home and there were no television transmitters till almost late 60s and early 70s. So media meant only the press, print media. Today, when you mention media, you include a vast, large trolling army of social media. You include a vast networks of television, private television. You include, of course, the press, and you also include all kinds of other media which have come into the play. And they're all global. In those days, when I joined Economic Times way back in 1970, the media meant only press, and it was easier to deal with the people. Today, it is almost impossible. Today, media has become like Pentagon, a huge army. And invariably, this particular army is against the ideas of democracy, secularism, and even human rights. I'll just give you a simple example today. Today only, when we are talking this, just a couple of hours ago, Narendra Modi did the Bhumi Puja of new parliament building. New parliament building, and we are talking of democracy. The new parliament building, Bhumi Puja, was cleared by the great Supreme Court and said Bhumi Puja can go ahead, but construction cannot. However, as I know, happened to be in Rajya Sabha, that part of the outside gate has already been demolished. Supreme Court has come up and joined later to say that no demolitions and no constructions. More important point than that is when Prime Minister Narendra Modi did the Bhumi Puja, the President was absent. The Vice President was absent. Vice President is the chairperson of Rajya Sabha. He is also not there. President is also not there. None of the parliamentarians have been invited for the great new parliament building. In fact, parliament as such, as it exists today, is completely irrelevant for the new project called parliament. I think it is necessary to recall this was not the idea of parliament. Forget idea of India, idea of democracy. This was not even the idea of parliament that we are talking about. The Central Vista project, which has been launched today formally, will be completed according to the plan that they have given in 2022, that is 2 years from now. And 2022 is also the year when the current president, COVID, will retire. 2022 is also the year when India will celebrate 75th year of independence. 2022 is also the year when perhaps we will have a different form of democracy altogether. Perhaps that is on the agenda, but we don't know. Because Narendra Modi wants to dramatize everything. He did not discuss even demonetization with his chief economic advisor. He did not discuss demonetization even with the finance minister. The cabinet did not know. Cabinet was locked up in a room, and demonetization was announced on the television, which they heard in that room. So he doesn't believe in real sense of cabinet-driven parliamentary democracy as far as the government is concerned. So if he doesn't believe in that, how will I believe that in 2022, suddenly Prime Minister Narendra Modi will come forward and say that we are changing our constitution to a presidential form of democracy. We are not abolishing democracy. We are converting it into presidential form of democracy, because in 2022, this current president will retire. And that presidential form of democracy will involve similar but not same pattern that United States has got or France has got. They are two different presidential systems. And India will be yet another third form of presidential system in which our president, that is Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, will have far more powers than Trump enjoyed or Boris Johnson enjoys. In fact, if you look at the way he is conducting, you'll find that he has already far more powers than all those presidents or prime ministers anywhere in the world. Whether it is Election Commission or Reserve Bank of India, whether it is CBI, NIA, IB, or whether the entire media about which you want me to speak, entire media, all are conducted like Philharmonic Orchestra, orchestrated by Prime Minister's office. As a result, the entire system has gone even beyond the so-called presidential system. And Prime Minister, earlier they used to say Prime Minister conducts his operations and elections like a presidential election. That is different. What I'm saying is he conducts the whole affairs of the government as presidential form of the government. Being in Rajya Sabha, I know, I talk to the people there, and even the BJP members are quite upset because they are not even consulted. Even BJP ministers are not consulted about their own ministries. Everything comes from the PMO, and PMO decides, Narendra Modi decides. Sometimes even the great darling of Prime Minister Amit Shah, he doesn't know. Amit Shah is also ordered to do things. As a result, we already have a semi-president or a prime minister with a presidential system, which he wants to make de jure, and perhaps he may start that process in 2022. So when we talk about defending democracy and defending the freedoms and defending the human rights, let me also remind you that today is the Human Rights Day. How many media channels, how many newspapers have given the Human Rights Day its due coverage? How many media persons have given the due attention to the kind of system that we are running at present, including the farmers' agitation? For that matter, the global attention on the farmers' agitation from Canada, UK to United Nations has all been undermined, criticized, condemned as foreign intervention or foreign hand. This is not the idea of democracy, and this is not the idea even of the media. Media is supposed to defend those rights, human rights. Media is supposed to defend democratic rights. Sanjay just mentioned about Stan Swami and Naulaka and others in the prison not getting their spectacles or not getting even straw to drink water because Stan Swami suffers from Parkinson disease. If this is a place where so many prisoners, there are more than 3 lakh prisoners, under trial prisoners, there is no FIR against them, there is nothing against them. They have not even been brought before the court. More than 3 lakh prisoners are there who are trying to live, but actually dying every day in jails, and there is nobody to protect them. I entirely agree with Sanjay as far as concerned. All the political parties must raise this. It is a basic human rights issue. And human rights, if they are not there, the idea of India or the idea of world or idea of universe have no meaning if we do not trust that idea of India is idea of world and idea of universe which has to be fought, and not fought only by political parties, but all institutions. Not only Congress, but Congress, communists, socialists, everybody, and including media. Once upon a time, media was supposed to be just engaged in 3 aspects of the business. Inform, educate, that it meant analysis also of the events. Inform, educate, analyze, entertain, and in the process, enlighten. Today, information has gone out of window. It is primarily misinformation or disinformation, and it is not even considered. Nobody provides apologies for the misinforming, disinforming, or even propagating wrong ideas. Sanjay mentioned about Tablighi, but the point is who promoted that idea? Not only the BJP, not only the RSS, which of course they did, but essentially that entire message that Muslims are responsible for Corona was promoted by 24/7 private television channels and a huge army of the social media. So it was media which has brought about this. Exactly 40 years ago in 1980, Bertram Gross wrote a book called Friendly Fascism. He wrote the book in 1980 in America. And he said, don't rule out even American democracy falling and degenerating into fascism. Why he wrote that? At that time, actually, Ronald Reagan was contesting and Ronald Reagan got elected. Trump was not there. After Trump came to power, openly there were books and articles in America that Trump is introducing fascism in America. Well, actually, they at least recognize that. In India today, we are actually participating in the process called fascism in the name of democracy, because the democracy means elections, and elections we have had, and Narendra Modi has been elected, whether in Bihar or Hyderabad. So what Bertram Gross said in 1980, that there will be a friendly fascism in democratic countries, and that idea has further been written about in the book called Democracies Can Die and How Democracies Die. So it is not as if it is happening only in India, but in India it is important because it is the largest democracy in the world in terms of demography. Not only that, the kind of freedom movement India has had actually promoted the human rights. Gandhiji used to often say that he is not against British alone. He was against the zamindari system, oppressive zamindari brutal system. He was against the oppressive capitalist system. He was against the caste system, which was having this hierarchy and oppressing the Dalits and the other castes. So for him, freedom meant freedom from caste order, freedom from capitalism, and he wanted capitalism not to be converted into socialism, but he used to say that they are trustees of the people. But we today have the capitalists, the so-called crony capitalists, the Ambanis or Adanis and many others, who are determining every single thing, including how to deal with the farmer sanitation. So capitalism has to be named as capitalism. And it is capitalism which is dictating terms to the government and asking them to make policies. And those policies are leading towards fascism. There is a link in all this. The capitalism cannot be distinguished completely. In Germany also, when monopoly capitalism reached certain head, Hitler came to power. So we are dealing with, in India, not only capitalism, but fascistic politics run by crony capitalists who are trying to undermine the rights, not only of the humans all over the country, but also specifically women's rights, workers' rights, peasants' rights, and so on and so forth. So actually human rights incorporates all these, but human rights also incorporates various sections, various classes. It is necessary, therefore, to determine what exactly we are fighting for. It is not just idea of India, because idea of India has been talked about a lot. It is inclusive, it is secular. Don't forget that in 1976, during emergency, when Indira Gandhi incorporated idea of socialism and secularism in the preamble, there was no demand for ideas included in preamble, socialism and secularism. No demand from intellectuals, no demand from media, no demand from writers, no demand from trade unions, farmers' unions, no demand from any political party, including Congress. Then how come she incorporated those two terms in the preamble of the Constitution? What was the compulsion? What was the pressure for her to include that? I think she was prescient she realized at that time, experiencing between 1973 and 1975 what happened, that India is threatened by the communal forces. And those communal forces can be thwarted, can be stopped in the tracks if we structure the socialism and secularism idea right in the constitution. So when you defend constitution, you have to defend secularism and socialism. However, while keeping that constitution and that preamble for so many years, even people opposed emergency and Indira Gandhi, tooth and nail, and yet they have not been able to remove that. Now they want to remove it. That's a different matter. But so far, for last 45 years, they have not removed those terms because it was difficult for them to remove. But now, getting confidence after 2014 victory of Narendra Modi and 2019, another second victory, they are so confident that they can change the constitution without calling it Hindu Rashtra. De facto, they can bring Hindu Rashtra, and de jure, they will keep certain forms of basic structures of the constitution, even while removing socialism and secularism from the preamble. So when we talk of parliamentary democracy, we consider media as one of the main institutions, more important today than judiciary, election commission, planning commission, Reserve Bank of India, CBI, NIA. More than that, media is considered as the most important because media is directly connected with the people. Media, and today particularly in largely literate country, reasonably educated country, and reasonably people with incomes and having mobile phones and connected with social media, I think today the media has one of the maximum responsibilities, almost as if not more responsibility towards the democracy and towards the idea of India than even army and the force. Because army will be called in, actually, very ironically, army will be called in to sort out the troubles created by the media. How many times in last about 7-8 years we have seen army had to be called because of the prejudice being spread, poison being spread by the media, and the society is getting completely disrupted, and some institutions getting uprooted. Social, civil society institutions getting uprooted. You have to call in the police, you have to call in the army, and so on and so forth to keep the institutions survive. But the idea that was actually promoting poison was the media. So according to me today, not because I belong to media, in fact, I'm ashamed to say I'm part of the media today by looking at the media, except for about 10% of the print and about 2% or 3% of the television and about perhaps 1% of the social media, they are defending human rights, civil rights, democratic rights, and the idea of India and secularism and the question of human rights and the idea of one world about which Sanjay mentioning Pandit Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. Today, none of the media institutions is defending those things. Even children's rights are not being defended. Women's rights are not adequately defended. Have you noticed that Hathras outrage has been completely forgotten in just about less than a month? And so many outrages are taking place and nobody takes notice. I think it is necessary for the media to rise, but media will not rise. So how do we deal with the media? Only one last point. We must find out how we came to this situation. In 1985, the only opposition to Rajiv Gandhi was whether he's a computer boy. Everybody ridiculed and condemned his ideas of technology missions, and they called him a computer boy. They ridiculed him. In fact, some of the cartoonists drew him a cartoon of Rajiv Gandhi as if he is a child playing with some abacus. But today, we are not discussing even computerization. We are not discussing technology. We are not discussing new economy. We are not discussing the new incomes. We are discussing only the question of Hindu-Muslim. So the entire discourse in 1985 was different and 2020 is different. At which point the discourse changed. That point of departure was with the launch of the Rath Yatra in 1990 and the campaign for Ram Janmabhoomi, which began in 1989. Around the same time, between 1989 and 91, globally, socialism was suffering a setback. And here also, the idea of socialism was having a setback. And that vacuum, ideological vacuum, was filled by Hindu fundamentalism here, Islamic fundamentalism somewhere else, white supremacist fundamentalism in the United States and parts of even Europe. So we find that the collapse of the socialist idea in the Eastern Europe and Soviet Union on the one hand, and the other hand, the liberals completely giving up the idea of defending human rights and democratic rights all over the world. Globalization did not mean only capitalization, should not have meant only capitalization. Globalization meant globalization of one world idea, which has been discussed for last more than 2 centuries. And exactly today, after globalization, we find the world is more fragmented, far more fragmented today than even in 1991 when the globalization was formally launched. So globalization has remained a name, world is fragmented. Idea of India has remained only in the textbooks, if at all. Now they will so be changed. And among the intellectuals to discuss, essentially, people think in terms of caste and religion, mainly Hindu Muslim. And I think that is a threat to democracy. And that is a threat to democracy. In fact, I will not be surprised by 2022, even the threat to parliamentary democracy will come or will become the jure when Narendra Modi will formally declare himself as president or will start the process of converting India into presidential democracy. I think we are in the threat not only of fascism, but if this fascism continues the way they are treating farmers' agitation, India can, if not controlled properly, and we do not believe in sovereignty, integrity, and unity of the country, India can face the same kind of predicament that Soviet Union faced in 1991 and disintegrated. Such a powerful country with 25,000 nuclear weapons could not protect itself, and it became 15 republics. Let us not delude ourselves that we are sovereign, united, integrated, secular, and socialist, or at least under one constitution. The disintegration specter is actually is hovering around us and that lurking around us. And if we do not, that is the liberals do not, if the media does not, if the intellectuals start surrendering in the new economy to the present government, I think we will be ruining our own cause and our own country. Thank you very much.
And a former IPS who has fought the Khalistanis to kindly address us. I present to you Mr. Julio Ribeiro.
Thank you, Jeenat. Uh, I think I have now assumed a new avatar of a writer. I keep sending my articles every week. Columnist, they call me. And I think that is easier for me to do than speak, because with advancing age, it becomes more and more difficult to gather your thoughts in a way that people will understand. Now, you asked me to talk about the role of the police in protecting civil liberties and building communal harmony. I thought that the police is a very important part of uh, any attempt to build up communal harmony. I returned to India after 4 years in Romania in 1994, January, actually December 93. And the first thing that happened by chance, actually, I attended a marriage where I met Mr. Khurakiwala, the sheriff, and he told me about his attempts during uh, the riots in 93, 92, 93, and he asked me whether I would be willing to take over from him the communal, the communal harmony platform that he was leading, what he called the Mahala Committees. And I first started with Mahim, where my friend Satish Sani, who was then the police commissioner, and Sushobha Barve, who was a very prominent activist in this field. And Sushobha and I went and met Satish, and we formed this Mualla committee. But we had to first convince the Muslims because they were very alienated, and they told me so. And they said, Mr. Ribeiro, why are you entering this? We have great respect for you, but we are not going to join hands with the government. We have been let down very badly. I said, well, that is the past. You must always look at the future. And if we make if the, Muslims who are matter in a locality, mainly the slum areas where the riots took place, if they are willing to join with their Hindu brethren in the same areas, the police should be the third part. It is the most important part. If the police is not there, this will not work. And we did that. We had a hard time convincing the Muslims in Mahim, but we finally managed after some 2 marathon sessions. And we started the Mahala Committees. I used to go, even though, age was catching up. We went to the slum areas, talked to the people. I remember one particular meeting in after the 2002 Gujarat riots, where there was a lot of tension in the slum areas, which were very active during the riots of 92, 93. And we went there. We got there were mainly ladies, the women, because the men were at work. And we got Hindu, Muslim and Muslim women in their traditional garb come up on stage and recount their own experiences of the 92, 93 riots and take a pledge that this should not occur again. And they pledged that they would not allow their men to fight. And with that, I thought that that would be a good idea to spread it to other slums. And we did that because this was in Dharavi. And it worked. At least the communal element was put down, because the men in the slum areas, they are poor, they don't have much to do sometimes, and they are the ones who are coaxed, shall we say, or to kill, and they get killed also, and their things get burnt and destroyed, and they lose out. And that is what their women afterwards mention. And then soon after that, about a year later, I was invited by a gentleman here whom I did not know, but my colleague in the police, my own batchmate. He was approached that he wanted the RSS chief, the search and chalak. It was Mr. The one before the present chief. He Sudarshan was in it, that he had come and he wanted to meet me. And I said, fair enough, I would not mind. I have nothing to say to him, but I'll go. And I went. And he told me, and he told others also who were there for that dinner, that look, the 80%, 84%, I thought he mentioned that figure, because the Sikhs were included among the Hindus. He said the Hindus are being treated as second-class citizens in their own country. And I was quite amazed with this statement. And I said that I never felt like that. My own bosses were Hindus and they were very good to me. In fact, my first boss actually had never probably entertained a Christian in his house. He made me stay with him and his young family when I was under training. And he said that he would like me to be a part of everything that he was doing. And I thought that I never forget that gentleman ever. And I thought that we gelled so easily. And I never thought of myself as a Christian. I've been going around many countries and I thought I'm an Indian. And if I met an Indian on the road, I hailed him like he hailed me. And people, my hosts were very amazed that I should hail anybody whom I do not know. But this was what came naturally to us. And now I understand what he meant by that second-class epithet. And he really, what has happened now is that my people working in the grassroots, both Hindu and Muslim, in the Mahala committees, say that they had never seen such hate and divisiveness as they see now. And it really it really saddens me to know that. You know, the other day, about a month ago, a little more than a month ago, I wrote a letter to the Commissioner of Police in Delhi because of the investigation in the Northeast Delhi riots, which were taking a path that was obviously very unfair. I pointed out to him that you have not even attempted to arrest those who
मेडिकल
tried to
नक्की प्रिंट
instigate
करायचं
the
नाही
riot. Yeah.
कामाची यादी करतोय मेडिकल नाही मी आत्ता जाईन त्यावेळेला
Can you just switch off, mute your this? And so I was really surprised. So I wrote to him and I gave that letter to the press so that he would reply, because our previous attempts to get him to see a delegation of old IAS and IPS officers had failed. And he immediately got in touch with me, had an hour's conversation trying to sort of justify his stand, which of course I was very wary about, because unfortunately the politicization of the police has now become so advanced. The politicization must have started much earlier, but now it is very well established. And the police do exactly what their political masters want, because otherwise they are given short shrift. Unless all of them stand together and defy these things, but they don't do that, because now the what is the word, the easy way in which they get their promotion, their advancement, their postings, whatever they want, by just approaching the politicians and asking for it. When the politicians playing cozy with them, and each one patting the other's back. This is going on at such a pace that the politicization is almost complete. And it's a great pity. Sanjay Jha mentioned about Sanjay Jha mentioned about the love jihad. I think the police themselves are so involved in, besides, I'm quite sure they must be also involved in corruption, because this is another conduit for that, for corruption also. But certainly taking up, venting their own anger against a community which they feel has been responsible for all these attacks and all the some disturbance on the line, and I think it is from somebody called Al Zakaria. Can you please put his place on mute? Yeah, thank you. Again,
there are two devices in the same room.
it'll
There
be
are two
difficult to
devices
speak.
close to each
There's
other.
all this noise on the background. But anyway, so when there is no noise, I'll talk. And I want to say that the police now has become totally politicized. You have seen what the Delhi police has been doing with regard to the JNU and the Jamia Millia students, and after that, with the cases that they are supposed to investigate impartially, the commissioner says that he is doing it impartially, but everyone knows that the persons who instigated the riots are still free, and the young students from JNU are being charged with it. So it's a very difficult situation which we are facing, where the political party in power decides who should be prosecuted, who should be taken, and who should not. Whereas the police are bound by the constitution and by the law to find out the truth, establish the truth, and take action accordingly. So uh, we do our best. The ones of us, those of us who have retired, we have a group called the Constitutional Conduct Group. This consists of all our former IAS and foreign service officers, as well as police IPS officers, and we work in tandem, and we write, we protest, we write letters, and we publish these letters. We try whatever we can. Our voice is heard, I presume, sometimes. At least there are some people who are taking up the right of the press, the role of the press to ensure that the government, the people in power, do not cross the line, because unfortunately this is happening more often than not now, much more than I had experienced in my previous 36 years in the police. So I feel that what Sanjay says, that all of us should join, whoever feels very strongly about what is happening, should combine, should strengthen our force by joining together, so that we protest. At least our protest should be heard, and they should know that there is not a clear path for them, because otherwise we are sunk. Institutions are being destroyed almost every day. Mr. My friend Kumar has mentioned that his own uh, uh, media not his own, but the media from where he hails, is now almost 90% captured. So but I hope the judiciary doesn't get that. The police is totally politicized, and so is the bureaucracy. But what it does remain and is a hope for us is the judiciary. And I hope by the power of appointments, they do not destroy that also. And the army and the forces, they always used to be secular, totally secular, and they prided themselves in that. But even that, I feel there is a clear attempt to 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 do something about that. And we have to be very careful and very alert to ensure that some, at least, of our rights are protected. Thank you, Zenith, for inviting me to speak. Yeah. Yeah.
Like Kumarji and like Sanjay, you have given a deep insight into how we can retrieve and reclaim the idea of India. So may I now invite Dr. Professor Ram Puniyani, who is a very well-known person in the field of communal harmony, how we can work as citizens of the nation to get together, put our hands and heads together to reclaim, what we call to reclaim our idea of India and to see how we can take India forward. So may I ask Dr. Professor Ram Puniyani to address us, please. Professor Ram?
Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Dr. Zenith, and good evening, distinguished friends. I must congratulate Dr. Zenith for having such a thought-provoking session on this Human Rights Day. And of course, my previous speakers have wonderfully brought out a picture of where we have landed up. There can be many highlights one can underline, but one thing which struck me today morning, of course, generally I don't watch the TV, but incidentally I happened to watch this Bhumi Pujan ceremony of our new parliament. And I was suddenly reminded of a similar type of a proposal when India became independent. There was a pressure on the government that government should renovate Somnath temple. That time Gandhi was alive and he said that renovating temple is not the job of the state, and Hindu community is very capable of making its own temple. The second part of the story is that after the private trust built the temple, they invited the President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, to inaugurate the temple. Now, Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister whose advice should have been binding, but Dr. Prasad decided to go and inaugurate the temple, but purely in the private capacity. Last few months, we have seen our Prime Minister taking part in the religious ceremony as a Prime Minister, as a office bearer of the highest office bearer of this government, and that tells in one way the story of decline of the idea of India, which began with our freedom movement, which saw its peak in the formation of Indian Constitution with the values of liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice, to the time where religious communities are being targeted, to the times where Dalits, women, and Adivasis are being marginalized. We have come to a state that where even the agitation of farmers for their economic rights is being presented through the religious colors, and that is very dangerous for our democracy. Anyway, we have come to a very type of state where communal amity totally stands shattered, and I must give one or two examples which Sanjay Jha did give, but they are worth repeating. That we all remember after CAA, which was the most communal act ever to come in India, which gives citizenship to all the persecuted communities except the Muslims. And after that, when the protests began, how brutally police attacked the students going to the library in Jamia Millia, in AMU. And after that, what started was probably gives a big hope. That something which gives the hope was the most democratic movement which took place in the post-independence India, and I of course mean by Shaheen Bagh. Shaheen Bagh movement, having preamble of Indian Constitution as its flag, having Mahatma Gandhi, Ambedkar as its icons, went on, and it went on all over the country. There was no single organization doing it. I asked myself, why women, Muslim women, who are supposed to be most conservative and under the captivity of their men, how they are coming in thousands and thousands and lakhs in actually, it was a protest against CAA, but it was also an expression of the cumulative pain which the Muslim community has undergone during last 60, 70 years. It was a cumulative pain of being victims of the communal violence, being targeted in the name of terrorism, and being subject to the adverse propaganda which is multi-layered and which begins from particular sessions. There is another word I think Mr. Julio Ribeiro used very well. I think the core of today's damage to India's democracy is the hate, which has been manufactured, which has been constructed, which has been strengthened over a period of years, and it has not got a proper challenge of the falsehoods which it has spread. What I mean by this is today the picture of a Muslim minority, picture of a Christian minority. Of course, Christian minorities are being mentioned less, but believe me, the atrocities against the Christian minorities are also on the rise. And incidentally, before I go further, I will like to give one rough statistics. Between 2014 to 2016, the atrocities against Dalits, Muslims, and Christians, and of course women, they have gone up by at least 20 to 30%. So, and I do believe that these atrocities, this violence is not spontaneous. This violence is not spontaneous. Mr. Ribeiro will bear me out that violence, as different studies show, is an orchestrated violence. It is not spontaneous in any way. and Mr. Ribeiro pointed about the Delhi violence, which is absolutely true. So, and see on the other side the graph of the violence which became more intensified after the Rath Yatras started being taken. On one side, we see the graph of yatras, the graph of violence going up. On the second side, the parallel graph which runs is the power of a particular party which wants to operate in the name of one particular religion. Of course, they have been able to undermine the narrative of India, which began not only from freedom movement, but even earlier. Now, there was one narrative of India that people of different religions live here harmoniously. They have strifes, they have things, but they celebrate their life. And this is what we saw in the teachings of Bhakti saints like Kabir, Tukaram, Namdev, Narsimhata, Sufi saints, Nizamuddin Auliya, Moinuddin Tishti, and hundreds of them. So this was one narrative where Hindus and Muslims are living together with peace, joy, etc. Now the same narrative goes on in freedom movement. And in freedom movement, the way Mahatma Gandhi practiced his religion, please note that he practiced Hinduism, and his Hinduism was an inclusive Hinduism. It was a Hinduism which respected the dignity of people of all the religion. So this narrative, which gets reflected in two particular books, one is that of Hind Swaraj by Mahatma Gandhi, and second is that of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Discovery of India, where he gives us a beautiful word called Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. Now, when this was going on, the communal forces were not sleeping. Please note what we have not noticed, that when we got relaxed about it, oh, India has become independent, it is secular, it is democratic, we have a constitution. We were sleeping on it, and the communal forces, through their continuous, unceasing work in their shakhas, in the institutions they controlled, through the media and through the other parts, they kept spreading hatred. They created, and hatred, of course, gets built up only by spreading misconceptions. The misconceptions of temple destruction, forcible imposition of Islam, conversion to Christianity, etc., etc. But I must give one or two examples which tell the beauty of our culture. Recently, one of my friends wrote a very beautiful article about Diwali being celebrated by Mughal kings. They used to call it Jashn-e-Charaga, means a festival of lamps. And same way, what we see in the life of different people, the type, yesterday only I came across that in UP in Rampur library, there is a Ramayana which is there, and the beginning of the Ramayana is with the holy number 786, Bismillah or Rahman Rahim, I of course don't know why. So this was one narrative with which we came up, and the way we struggle in freedom movement, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, shoulder to shoulder, and the primary identity of Indian, which Mahatma Gandhi successfully brought in, was on one side. On the other side, communal forces, which were weak at that time, kept working ceaselessly. And it is through this propaganda that our social common sense today has come to a point where daily you open your WhatsApp, you will see 2 or 3 messages which are extremely hateful against Muslims, against Christians, and against especially Jawaharlal Nehru in particular, who symbolizes a upright scientific temper, secular values, democratic values to the upgrade. So these 3 messages of hate, and they are not incidental. As it was being said that the media brought in this Corona Jihad. Believe me, it was not incidental. A large section of media could bring it up because the indoctrination which has gone in through shakhas, through the types of media which communal forces have used, that there is a large section of journalists who do it not just by the saying of their master, but they themselves have started believing. And see the creativity, their evil creativity. They created a word, Corona Jihad, Corona bomb. And of course, this is it. So the total social thinking has been corrupted by communalism. So this is where I think is the biggest danger. So my understanding is misconceptions against minorities, leading to hate, leading to violence, leading to polarization, and leading to this type of a situation in which we are. So as you pose the question, how do we undo it? I think the same steps have to be undertaken to undo it. We have to recall the humanism of Sufi tradition, humanism of Bhakti tradition, and the inclusive practice of religion of Mahatma Gandhi, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Jawaharlal Nehru, all these people who came together to give us a India which was to keep away these religious issues. And of course, in last 60, 70 years, at some time, of course, I must say it was inadequate, but we were on a correct path. Scientific temper, institutions, and nurturing the different institutions we had in the area of science, in the area of administration, in the area of investigation, etc., etc. So that went on. But now, what is dominating the scene after this Ram temple? Now love jihad has come up. Other such things will come up one by one, and it doesn't take that evil genius much to manufacture these issues which are emotive, which create hate, which divide the society. So, my friends, I think there is a very urgent appeal that we have somehow to combat this hate. I don't know many methods, but two, three suggestions which I think we should follow. First suggestion is that the misconceptions which have been spread against the religious minorities have to be undone. We have to propagate a narrative beginning with Bhakti Sufi tradition to Mahatma Gandhi, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad of the inclusive nature of our society. The type of things which Nehru talked in Discovery of India, which are there in Shyam Benegal's Bharat Ek Khoj, they have to be popularized. And with this thing, the values of Indian Constitution, just by saying Indian Constitution needs to be imposed, we are not being able to do it. We have to stand with every struggle for human rights, every struggle for citizens' rights. We have to support the movements of students, farmers, Dalits, women, and all these groups. We have to solidly support. And we have also to break these walls of hatred and create the bridges of love. And these bridges of love can be made only through our proactive steps. And you remember, Professor Mr. Ribeiro, at one time I used to be part of that. Lot of workshops amongst policemen here, there, and of course for that I traveled to interior places as his organization was doing that, Mahala Committee and other these sort of workshops where positivity of our society, positivity of our system, they are propagated further. And I hope we are able to give the new generation number of volunteers, thousands and lakhs of them who know this culture, who know these values, and who can take out time to spread these values through personal interactions, through social media, and through whatever mechanisms we are possible. This, I think, is the only way we can bring back the foundations of Indian Republic, which is diverse, which is plural, which is inclusive, and that way probably we have some hope. Thank you very much.
Puniyani. What we have, what you have given us, and what my other panelists, what Sanjay has said, what Kumar ji has said, what Julio has said, that in the various aspects we have to get the positives out, and we have to see to it that we move together and we understand and undo these kind of myths that have accumulated, that we have barriers that we have created which must disappear. May I now invite Shri Tushar Gandhi, who is, we are waiting to hear you, the great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, a leader of many peace movements, and a personal friend of mine. Thank you for being with us, Tushar. Here, I give you the mic. We are waiting to listen to you.
Thank you very much, Zeenat. I'm at a disadvantage in being a part of such an eminent panel because everybody else on this panel is there because of their own achievements, and I am there merely because of the accident of birth. So thank you very much for honoring me with this position to be in amongst such fantastic and inspiring people. I think we need to start. We've been too, we fancied this idea of India notion too much. I have come to doubt whether there really exists an idea of India at all. Because you've asked me to speak about Bapu and his way to lead us forward. But we must today admit that the greatest failure of Gandhi was his inability to do away with the differences that existed in our society, the cracks that were there in our society. He gave his life to abolish them. He gave his life to abolish the caste system, the caste differences, the religious differences, the gender biases, the feudal mindset. Each and every existing difference that was in that the society in his time, he made it his duty and his life's work to defeat them and do away with them. But at the end of his life, he himself admitted that he had miserably failed in that. Now what we should be debating is whether Bapu failed or we as a people failed him, because after post Bapu, we have as a people continuously failed that dream that he had seen and that unfinished agenda that he had. And we've almost always uh, told ourselves that it's not our responsibility. Whereas the man himself took responsibility for everything that happened in society at that time, and especially for the failures, all the mistakes and failures. Bapu made his life's duty to introspect and find out where he had erred, where he had made a mistake which led to this mistake that we see, the error that we see in society at his time also. And his tool of fasting was one of the methods by which he introspected and sort of tried to look inwards within himself to find the flaw in him. Unfortunately, now we have become a nation of finger pointers. We point fingers at the political opposition. We point fingers at the communal people. We point fingers at everybody else but our own selves. We have lost the ability to stand in front of a mirror that reflects the moral decay within us. We don't have the courage to see that, and that is where we are continuously losing ground. Hate is today a bigger epidemic in our country and in the whole world than corona can ever be. It is the virus of hate that is the greatest danger to our civilization or life on earth, and you see its manifestation everywhere. In every society we see the rise of hatred. Terrorism has given us a very convenient excuse to hate an entire segment of people and apportion blame to them, and demonizing one faith as the fountainhead of terrorism, while our own society we have been terrorizing people for centuries. The caste system is the first institutionalized terror system in the whole world, where people are denied even a status of human beings. And we have institutionalized and tolerated it all the time. Right up to 1992, there were so many numerous atrocities happening on a day to day basis against the Dalits and the lower castes. Every higher caste used to commit atrocities against the segments that were below them. But this debate never happened at that time, because we thought that it is, the caste prejudice, it's on the way out, it will go away. It never went away. And that was the idea of India that people now are exploiting politically, because they have not created the fissures in our society. The fissures existed. They have merely exploited those fissures and made them into abysses that divide us. And every single difference that they could be exploited has been exploited. We keep blaming the British for the divide and rule policies, but since independence, our own rulers and our own society has thrived on divisions and dividing people. Look at what happened during the corona epidemic. The panic-stricken fleeing of the labor class from the metros to their villages was a brutal reflection of our inhumanity in our urban society. That at a time of crisis, the entire system that used to sustain our urban luxurious lifestyle was abandoned and had to run away to save themselves. That was the greatest slap in our faces, in the face, and that was not politically motivated. That was just because human beings survive by the overbearing sense of survival. That is the only thing that matters to them. And that is what showed us the rot in our society. That we talk in platitudes about saving democracy and saving secularism and saving socialism and things. But in our day-to-day lives, we are so apathetic about the situation, it never bothers us. We'll go to seminars and give fancy lectures about child labor. But in our offices, when Chotu brings us a cup of tea, we do not recognize it as child exploitation. In our homes, when we find a minor who will work for in our house for a salary much, much, much lesser than what an adult would think, we jump at employing that Chotu. And then we'll say, "Arey, hum unko usko padhate bhi hain." But we are as criminal in our practices unless we start introspecting and look with a fine comb at all the flaws that have crept into and become acceptable in our lifestyle, and weed them out and have remorse for them and try to change ourselves. That fancy quote of Bapu that goes around the world, "Be the change that you wish to see in this world," will just remain a fancy quote. We will never ever be able to do that. And if we want to save, if we don't even talk about humanity in total just about India, Indians will have to be changed. How do you think, why did the communal forces become so powerful and so popular? Because in our nature we are communal. The first identity we want to know about a stranger is their caste, is their religion. It's only after that that we come to their professions and educational qualifications and other things and achievements. I have had these experiences so many times in my life. In London, a young Indian girl in London came and asked me what my surname was. And I said, "Why do you want to know my surname? What difference does it make?" And she tells me, then I can make up my mind whether I should greet you by folding my hands from far or extend my hand and shake your hands. And I couldn't understand what she meant till it suddenly struck me that my surname would tell her my social caste standing. And then she would decide whether I was worthy of her touching me, or she would just do a polite namaste from far off because I was below her in that status. Now, in the present century, in a Western world where that girl most likely was born and brought up in England, if she has this mental makeup, the flaw is in how we bring up our children. The flaw is in how we live our lives in families. The flaw is in how we do it. When I was in the Samajwadi Party, in Mumbai, it was called the Muslim League because basically after 92, Muslims had flocked towards that party in Mumbai. And so we used to go to a lot of our workers were Muslims and we would go to there. And I remember very distinctly when we visited the homes of Shia workers, they would give us water, they would serve water to us in sealed mineral water bottles. And at one or two places, they made it a point to come and show us that the seals were intact, they were not broken. And after some time, I asked my host, I said, why do you have to show me that seal of the bottle that is not broken? I'm not bothered. You give me water in a glass, I'll drink it merrily and happily. But he kept quiet. He said, nahi sahab, aise hi hota hai. Then when we left, a Sunni Muslim told me that wo Shia hai. He's a Shia. So I said, so what? He says, you can't drink water in a Shia's house. And so that's why he was showing you that the bottle was sealed. It wasn't Shia water, it was drinkable water. Now, when we are so culturally divided, what is this idea of India that we are so proudly talking about? Where does it come? Where does it exist in our lives, normal lives? And then where is it that why is it that we are talking about Bapu? And if this whole thing is merely a political debate to score political points against parties, yes, the communal parties at least are loyal to their communal agenda. They have always believed in a communal agenda and they have worked towards that communal agenda. Can the so-called secular parties stand up and say that they have loyally stood with secularism all their lives, political lives? Why are we having this debate today and saying that the communal parties are doing all the damage? It is their business to do that damage. They have never hidden that agenda that we are going to divide you because we only want to cater to a very small segment of the society that makes up India. But what about the secular parties, the so-called secular parties? What have they done to strengthen secularism? Why? What right do they have to even claim the legacy of Pandit Nehru and Gandhi? When there is a burning agitation happening for the past 1 year, first CAA, then the farmer agitation, and there's so much discontent simmering under the scene, where have they come out on the streets to fight even a political battle? So what is the civil society going to do? The only thing we can do if we want to go back to the Gandhian way is initially introspect honestly and find out the weaknesses amongst ourselves that exists in each one of us. The caste differences, the class differences, the arrogance of education, the arrogance of being intellectuals. All these things need to be addressed before we can sit and honestly talk about an inclusive ideology of life, which Bapu did. Unfortunately, we failed him. And at that time, when our country was beset with the hate, it was Gandhi's martyrdom that saved this country, and it saved us for 60 years after that. Today, we must remember that we do not have a Gandhi to save us again. We have to take responsibility ourselves. And it's not going to happen by mere discussions and intellectualizing the whole thing. While we intellectualize the subject, the communal forces are working in the society today to spread their venom and make it acceptable. They have addicted our society to hatred. I experience it every morning on social media because unfortunately, I must admit that I also am very reprehensible on social media, but I keep instigating the communal forces every day. by putting something or the other and the amount of hate that I attract is unbelievable. Even innocent things that you do. This time at Janmashtami, I remember somebody sent me a beautiful couplet in Urdu in praise of Krishna. All the names of Krishna interpreted in Urdu, in the Urdu language, and written a paragraph written on that. I put it up on my social media. My most dear friends challenged me, saying that, can you write the similar thing about Muhammad in Sanskrit? Why are you so? Somebody asked me, "Tere ko Pakistan se paisa milta hai kya?" And very seriously, they said, "Do you get money from Pakistan to do all these things?" Just singing the praise of Krishna in Urdu triggered this kind of a thing. Then in Diwali, again to needle them. My intentions were not honorable. I was doing it because I wanted to needle them and poke them and torture them a bit. My greetings this Diwali was Jashne Chiraga Mubarak. And once again, I got the same thing. Tum Eid pe Sanskrit mein greeting karte ho kya? Do you greet the Muslims on Eid in Sanskrit? Why do you have to greet the Hindus on their Hindu festivals in Urdu? This is the depth of hatred that we have reached in our society. And this is what manifests in all the mob lynchings and everything else, all the violence that we see in our society. It begins with ourselves, in our own homes, in our own society. Unless we address that and create situations where we'll change it. I'll give you an example. In the 60s, my uncle, Harilal Gandhi's son, Dr. Kantilal Gandhi, started a trust in Mumbai called the Lok Seva Trust. One of the programs that he used to conduct in that trust every year was, on every major festival, he would have a get together of couples of mixed marriages. Not just interreligious marriages, but also intercaste marriages. He would get those couples and they would be felicitated. And twice a year, he used to organize a meal where all these interfaith, intercaste marriages, couples would come and would have a meal together and would socialize and interconnect with each other and other members of the society and things. Unfortunately, after his death, that practice collapsed. Today, when we are all talking about love jihad, the only response to that venom of love jihad is on social media, where I see on Instagram there is a handle called the Love Project, the India Love Project, and in that they show interfaith and inter-religion marriages, talking about their own love and their marriage and their life after marriage. That is the only ray of hope. This is the time when I feel very strongly, and I hope that if I get the support, I'm going to be able to revive that practice of my uncle. No political statements, nothing, just honoring the couples. One of my friends made a documentary post 2002 riots in Gujarat. He made a documentary about couples, Hindu Muslim couples, Hindu Christian couples, where when Babu Bajrangi was very active in Gujarat, and he was actually kidnapping girls who had married interfaith and interreligion and forcing them to marry Hindus again. This friend of mine made a documentary with 6 couples who were mixed religion couples, and showed their stories and their persecution that they faced and the fear that they faced. This morning, I sent a message to this friend of mine and I said, "This is the time when you need to revive that project." And he messaged me back. He said, "Tushar bhai, I had the same idea and I went back to the couples and said, let's do a update on that documentary and re-release it." And they said, "No, we are very scared of the persecution we will face. Please forgive us, but we don't want to come in front of the camera anymore." This is the kind of fear that our own people are living under in what we consider to be a country governed by a constitution which has secularism in its preamble. What good is that secularism in its preamble? Kumar Saab said that, maybe it will be soon discarded. It's gone. It's discarded long, long back. The only thing that they will now do is erase the word from the constitution. That's all. But that belief has been erased from a majority of hearts long back, not yesterday, not in 2014, or even in 2002 or 98. Long, long before that, those words were being erased and we did nothing about it. So let's not be hypocrites and talk about Gandhi's India. This is not Gandhi's India. This has never been Gandhi's India. What we should be worried about is it our India? Is it the India we wish to bequeath to our future generations? Let's work for that. Thank you very much.
Tushar, for giving us such an insightful and human presentation as to what is actually happening in civil society among us and how we have to look into the mirror ourselves, each one, and reflect on how we can better the situation, better ourselves, better our families, better our situations. Thank you very much for that. And before I take in the question and answers, there's just one comment I would like to make, that with such a distinguished panel before me, as that has spoken brilliantly, when Kumarji and Sanjay have concentrated on the political understandings. Julio has given us the reflections of how the police should जो रखवाले हैं इंसानों के, people, when you're in trouble, you go to the police ke bhai help kariye. Where are they heading? And how Professor Dr. Ram Puniyani has given us a very wide understanding, and you, Tushar, have really narrowed it down, brought it down to how each one of us has to bring about change. There's just one thing that I wanted to bring out, is that when we speak about a practical, how does one practically implement the idea of India, or the goodness, or remove the hate, or how do we live as human beings? Leave aside Hindu, Muslim, caste, upar, niche. How are we human? Where is our bond of humanity? And recently, I was asked this question, from a higher up, as to what do you find common between politics? How can politics and religion? What is the common thread for them to come and work together? How does a political leader and a religious leader, or groups, come to work together? So there are two ways that I thought. One is that there is a thread of humanity. Religion teaches you humanity, teaches you no caste system, teaches you equality, teaches you ek dusre ke sath baitho, ek dusre ke sath khana khao. That's what religion is teaching you. And politics also deals with the people, of the people, for the people, by the people. If there is poverty, then the politician has to be blamed. I remember at the time of the Prophet, when there was when there was poverty and people didn't have anything to eat, it was the Khalif who was held responsible.
No.
Yes, show it to me, so I'll read it out. There is a comment which has come in which, somebody who has not named himself or herself is saying that all speakers have spoken very well, highlighted what is going wrong with our democracy at this point in India. However, Professor Ram Puniyani was very refreshing with what he concluded. And I think Tushar Gandhi was apolitical and addressed the right to be in human rights. Above, it was sent by Nalina Jivani. And there's another person who, by the name of Priya Ubale, who has commented that we think communal voices abound, but there are so many of us who don't think like that at all. And where are those forces to meet people like us and to make us into a majority voice? We are now a minority voice. How do we combine ourselves to make a majority voice? And further?
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Can I comment on that?
Please, Professor Ramani, please.
Actually, optimistically speaking, this comment is very touching, that there are many of us who don't believe in this sectarianism, narrowness, and we have openness. But point is that we are all scattered individuals. Our collective wisdom or our collective action does not come into force. You see, the communal forces are united like a solid fist, and the thinkers, like our friend is saying, that many of us don't believe in this. We don't have a proper a platform, I will say, or a sort of association, but whereby we can say, yes, we stand for these values. I'm not talking of political parties alone. I'm talking of a broad layer of social thinkers. Most of us who are there, they need to, I think, combine their voices with each other. And they sound weak, ineffective, and in the margins, not because they're in minority. I want to believe that they're in majority, but because of their fragmentation, it seems that they are of no consequence in shaping the future of this country. That will be what I will like to believe. And so, in that sense, what I feel suggestion for myself, that how do we create a common platform for people like this, who have a very positive outlook, who have a very integrative outlook, and means everybody cannot be Mahatma Gandhi, but who have elements, a bit of that tendency, that positivity, those of us who have, if we can combine our forces in a social platform, that will really give a better shape of things to come in the future. Done.
Thank you, Professor Ram. Is there anything else that's coming? We have a couple of other people who have, I think they have already left us. So I think we will close for today. I want you to know that we are on YouTube. We are live on other channels. Thanks to Professor Ram Puniyani. We have this person by the name of whom I would want to thank, by the name of Mr. Shakil Ahmed, who has given us a whole channel, Desh Ka Aaina, and where we are being relayed live just now. And YouTube is also, they're taking care of the YouTube also. I want you to know that internationally, our conference has shown, our webinar has been, is being watched in the United States, in the Arab countries. There are some other people in Israel who are watching us. And I think in our India first, all over. So I think there is Mr. Gayas Ahmad, who is a very old family friend. And he is awake early in the morning today only to get us on. Would you like to ask a question, Gayas? Do you have a question?
I'm so much impressed by these ideas that non-Muslims are talking about the religion and secularism in India. I have not heard many of these people, many of these kind of comments from other friends. I'm really proud of you to have this kind of Zoom meeting. It really broadens our views. I hope everybody else is watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gayas is a very old family friend and he's awake early in the morning, and he called me 3 times to say that he is very interested in watching us. And so we thank you for being with us. And I thank all our distinguished panelists. Thank you, Sanjay, for coming at such short notice. You are my dear friend, and I am really grateful to you. I owe you one. Thank you, Kumarji. You have given a very, very, analytical understanding of the media, of the political situation that we are placed in, and like it or not, we have to look at the truth in the eye. Thank you very much for spending so much time with us. I know you're so very busy. Thank you, Julio. Thank you for being with us, Julio, and thank you for being the super cop. Thank you for coming down strongly and standing for justice, standing for truth, and standing for our police force coming together and helping people. Life is short, and it's corruption doesn't have a major payoff. So these things are not workable. Thank you for your very thought-provoking comments. Thank you, Professor Ram, Dr. Professor Ram Puniyani. I have listened to you for ages, and being in the communal platform, I think that there is no one equal to you today to speak on the subject because you're so well versed and you're so involved with it. Thank you for us. And thank you, Tushar. Thank you. And no, yes, you are the great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. And let me tell you, that shows. Tushar, that shows. That shows. I want to say thank you to you for being with us. And you are a person in your own right. We love you for what you are. Okay. And for being with us. Thank you. I thank this panel. And I want to make a special, very special thanks to Mr. Nasser Al Nasser Zakaria, without whom this webinar would not have been, because
Animals.
because I don't know how to, I did not know how to get into a webinar, but Nasser stood by me. He's an old Xavierite, and even when I was not really appointed as the professor, he used to come to my classes. And here, his son Amiruddin. Here is a young man. This is what you call material, who has spent hours with us. You know, with my telephone calls, bugging him all the time when he was in the middle of a class, when he was in the middle of learning something and imparting something. But he has spent so much time with us. Thank you very much, Amir. And we wish you all the very best. Now he's planning to go abroad for his higher education. We wish you all the very best. And thank you for being with us. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, distinguished audience who have been with us, listening to us. And we want to spread the good word. This program is being recorded and it will be put into the website of the Wisdom Foundation. Once we, it's very long. So, we have to look into it and how we can put it on. And thank you for being with us. I think just us talking and learning from each other has been, very fruitful. And I express, the Wisdom Foundation expresses its great gratitude to you. And please say a special prayer for our advisory board member, Admiral Ramdas, who's been with us, like Kumarji and like Ram, Puniyani's doctor, from the inception of our committee. And, thank you, Mr. Mendonza, who's on our board. And Julio, you are also on my board. I consider you to be on the board of the Wisdom Foundation, and also Tushar. And want to thank Mr. Mendonza and want to thank Mr. Salim Fazil Boy and Mr. Murad Fazil Boy, Mrs. Nirmala Savant, who was the former mayor of Bombay, who's also on the board of the Wisdom Foundation. Thank you very much for your full support. Thank you for being with us, and good night and good evening.